I'm going to play two clips for you. The first is Stefan Molyneux, basically advocating for his defooing technique. For those of you who don't remember, Stefan used to advocate the position that you should excommunicate people who don't agree with the basic principles of libertarianism, or I don't know, anarcho-capitalism, the non-aggression principle, because they want to do violence to you, or they would advocate for the government to do violence to you. And on that basis, you should get rid of them. You should excommunicate them. You should defoo them out of your life. The second clip I'm going to play for you is Vaush describing how to deal with friends and family members who go down what he calls the alt-right pipeline.
Somebody says, I support farm subsidies. You simply say to them, do you support me getting shot if I don't support them? I think we need socialized medicine. Will you support me getting shot if I don't agree? And that those in your life, not in the news, those in your life who advocate and praise you getting shot, what are you going to do with those people? Should I be shot? When they drag me away and throw me in a pit of anal rape, do you support the use of violence against me? Do you support me being shot? You don't keep people in your life who want you shot.
You have to recognize that sometimes you don't have any control over what kind of media this person is consuming or what they're doing with their life. Like if it's a friend, you know, or maybe not like a super close friend. What do you do then? Well, one of the best things about YouTube is that when people find my videos, they find it of their own volition. Nobody can be well, you can be forced to watch a YouTube video and some Agent Orange, or sorry, like Clockwork Orange shit, you know, but for the most part, when people encounter my content, whether they agree or disagree with it, they choose to open up the video, they choose when to close the video and exit the page. And that's important because when people are confronted on their positions, they get defensive. Every time. You will never be able to debate a person out of a position that they hold, especially if it's a far-right set of positions, because A, hyperfragility and defensiveness are very much intrinsic to far-right political positions, and B, these positions are not usually reasoned into. So aggressively reasoning them out usually won't work. Now, what you should do, and this is what I recommend 99 times out of 100, okay? If it's a friend or a family member, whatever, approach them, say, in no uncertain terms, I'm really worried about the direction you're going politically. I strongly disagree with some of the things that you've been saying, some of the positions you've held, some of the arguments that you've made. I want to talk about them with you, but let's do it sometime in the future. You come to me if you want to talk about it. And then you leave them. They need to make the choice to come to you. If they don't, you can bring it up again in a few weeks. And if they never come to you, then that's it. Your opinion never mattered enough to them for you to have had the ability to change their mind. They need to come to you openly, because to come to you is the first concession they make, a tacit admission that they care about your opinion. And that is the very first thing they need to do, admit they care about your opinion, in order to change their mind. Because the easiest thing reactionaries on the internet can do to avoid getting introspective about their beliefs is to tell themselves they don't need to care about the opinion of the person they're listening to.
Now, the reason I showed you those was because when I was listening to Vaush's video, it immediately reminded me of Stefan. And it reminded me of Stefan's defooing because look at how these two men are approaching giving what is essentially relationship advice. It is advice about how to approach people in your life that you have close personal relationships with potentially, and with whom you may have some ideological disagreements. And what is their advice? Well, their advice comes down to essentially using the personal relationship you have with this person as a shield for the ideology. Rather than trying to strengthen the bond or maintain the bond you have with someone that you may disagree with on some political issues, they say, no. What you should do instead is throw your personal relationship in front of the ideology and give them an ultimatum. If you don't accept my ideology, you want to have me shot. And you know what? If you want to have me shot, then I can't have you in my life. That's what Stefan endorses. And on the other side, you have Vaush saying, well, if they won't talk to you about this, if you give them an ultimatum, if you approach them with this assertive, authoritarian tone, like I am concerned about the path you're going down. You're essentially having an intervention. That's what it sounds like when you put it like that. Instead of discussing it reasonably with a person, being somewhat open to what they're saying, you want to come in and just say, no, I'm very concerned with you, and I disagree very strongly with what you say, and we need to talk about this. And the issue with that is like, okay, you want to talk to them about it, but you don't want to listen to their concerns. You don't want to entertain why it is that they think this, and you don't want to give them the validation of thinking that maybe some of these concerns are actually valid. This is the thing. He goes on. I'm going to respond to the rest of this video after. I just wanted to break it up a little bit so that I wasn't throwing too much at you at once. But the thing is, he's talking about essentially just telling these people like, I can't debate you. I can't debate you out of this position because you're too emotional. You're just an emotional creature, and so I have to emotionally manipulate you out of it. And that's the only way. I mean, really, let's think about it. Who has less respect for whom in this situation? If you're going to apply Vaush's advice, how do you think it's going to come off? How do you think this other person's going to look at you? When you don't actually like approach them and in some sort of respectful manner and try to reason with their points. Instead, you treat them like they're some irrational woman. And this is the thing. Vaush is all about projection. I'm going to get into that, but you just don't take this fucking advice. If you're a leftist and you come across this video, let me give you some actual advice as to how to deal with this. If you have someone in your family that's going down the alt-right pipeline, just fucking talk to them. Talk to them the same way you've always talked to them. And just try to be friendly and try to show that you're concerned about them. Prioritize that instead of being an authoritarian dickhead and coming at them like, oh, you know better and you're smarter than they are, and you're gonna oh, I'm gonna debate you, but I'm gonna debate you using these slimy, underhanded, emotional tactics because I've already decided that you're just too emotional to deal with logically. I mean, this is a cope. This is a fucking cope. You can't actually deal with what these people say. And so you have to psychologically manipulate them out of the position that they've now taken. And it's just a despicable way to treat someone. It's a despicable way to argue. But Vaush is a despicable person. And that's why you shouldn't listen to this fucking guy. I mean, I'm sorry, but he's really just an awful person. And why are you listening to some fat autist, literal autist, give you advice about personal relationships? You think this fucking guy has any idea? Look at his girlfriend. Look at his girlfriend. Do you think he has any fucking social intelligence whatsoever if that's the best he can do? Come on, give me a fucking break. So anyway, I'm going to respond to the rest of Vaush's video here.
That's why people in my comment section are always saying shit like fat, man bun, soy boy, whatever. Do they really think they're being funny or engaging by commenting on the like superfluous characteristics of my appearance? Probably not. What they're doing is telling themselves they don't need to listen to me because I fit into a group, an archetype, a stereotype that they feel they don't have to listen to. We all do this to an extent, and we do it often with people on the far right as well. This is something humans do in general. They're called thought-terminating cliches. It's a rhetorical technique that people use to insulate themselves from the vulnerability of having to consider opposing opinions.
Actually, Vaush, your appearance is only superfluous to the extent that it's unchangeable. I mean, if it's something that you can't really affect, if it's something that's not your fault, if it's purely biological, and by the way, even then, it's not necessarily irrelevant because as we know that people that have untrustworthy faces just tend to be untrustworthy. There's certain features, certain genetic components to it that Anyway, yeah, I don't think I have to go. I think you get what I'm saying. But the point is, the reason why people do that, Vaush, it's not just a self-terminating cliche, as you say. It's because your ideology and your physicality are interlinked. The reason why you look the way you do is partly because you're a Marxist who lives his life like a capitalist. You make excuses for your capitalism, saying, "Oh well, Marx said it was a stepping stone to this, so it's okay that I take thousands of dollars in super chat donations and live off of streaming. It's okay that I'm doing shitty YouTube videos videos and claiming to be part of the working class. You are an extremely insecure man who projects all of his own failings onto his political opponents. That's what you do. That's all you do. I mean, let's look at your appearance. You're fat. Now, why are you fat? It's because you eat, and you eat too much, and you eat the wrong foods. You have no self-control. You have no ability to change yourself. You claim to be a revolutionary, but you can't even meaningfully affect change in your own life. You can't control your own diet. So this is the problem. If you are someone who believes that ideology is everything and there's no biological relevance to who you are, okay, well then imagine how Vaush applies his ideology to himself. I mean, this is a man who is fat, and he has clearly no ability or will to change that. His posture is terrible because he's constantly bent over a computer. He's not attempting to change that. He has an extremely weak jawline, which is why he grows out that big, disgusting, bushy beard. I mean, his jawline is the Chernobyl of Vaush. Within that, if you think about Chernobyl, think about how the USSR covered that up. And, Vaush is essentially covering up this huge deficiency in himself by growing up this big beard. And this is the problem. Your ideology does have an effect on who you are. It does have an effect on what makes you what you are. And this is another thing. Look at his hair. And, his hair is kind of gross. He's got that gross man bun, but he clearly oils it. You can tell it's not like dried out and cracked and, really untended. So this is a man who does on some level care about his appearance, and yet when it comes to the really salient aspects of the socially valued things about his appearance, he's not willing to do the hard work to actually change it. And so an undisciplined, fat, disgusting soy boy like him, as he put it, is someone, I don't feel like I have to listen to. And it's not because of superfluous aspects of the way you look. It's not because you fit into an archetype. The archetype is a meme for a reason. There's a reason why the fat fedora exists as an archetype, because it's true. If an ideology leads you to ruin in your own life, imagine what it would do to the rest of society on a macro level. This is the point. You're fat, disgusting, and undisciplined because you're a communist, because you're a Marxist-Leninist, because you sit around in this pedantic, theoretical, pseudo-academic world that exists in your head, theorizing about how things work, but not actually like applying them to real life. And so because you play in this emotional sandbox, what's actually happening around you is the walls of your life are just crumbling in. You're just becoming more fat and more disgusting and more hedonistic and more degenerate. It's why you go out and have men fuck you in the ass, and then you come home to this 350-pound Indian land whale. That is a direct consequence of the way you think. You would not be as fucked up as you are without the ideology you subscribe to. You understand what I'm saying?
So if they come to you, that means they're admitting to themselves that they care about what you believe, even if it's only to try and change your mind. And then, when they come to you, you'd better be able to argue your point. There's no remedy for this. Find out what specific emotional triggers are inviting them to push for whatever positions you want to move them off of, For example, with transphobes, it's usually motivated not by, as they claim it is, some lofty wish to defend women or some principled belief in the rigidity of gender roles and their association with biology. It's usually really simple. They're just uncomfortable with or disgusted by the existence of trans people. But they don't admit that because that just makes them sound like what they are, which is deeply irrational crybabies.
Well, I'll partly agree with you. I don't think that being emotional is necessarily an irrational thing. I think that there are good reasons why people have reactions to certain things. There are reasons why people have visceral reactions to snakes and rats and other animals, which are rooted primarily in history. They're rooted in our ancestors' experience with these things. Now, today, the threat of the bubonic plague does not exist. It's not likely you're going to contract some horrible disease from a mouse. And yet, so many people, particularly women, are absolutely terrified of mice, terrified of these innocent little creatures that could never hurt you. Oh, well, that's irrational. Well, look, we can break it down and we can talk about the reasons why, transsexuals, if we want to call them that, which I think is too generous. They're just disgusting creatures. Why these people are not good to have in a society, why they shouldn't be promoted and elevated through the hierarchy. There are good reasons for that, but there's also no reason why someone who is, less intellectual or just not invested in the debate might just go with their gut, just go with their emotions. Like, okay, my gut tells me this is disgusting and I don't want it. And if you have a problem with that, I know Vaush is quote unquote bisexual. But for most of his audience, I imagine a lot of his audience are just straight dudes, just liberal straight guys. Okay, well, I want all of you or one of you to rationalize why you don't want to suck dick. You have to give me a rational, cohesive argument based on facts and figures and studies as to why you don't want to suck dick, and stop being an emotional crybaby. Stop being an irrational crybaby. Just suck the dick. Suck the dick, bigot.
But you, as a person who is close to this person, I would hope, have the opportunity to ascertain what head state they're in and why they believe the things they believe. Are they worried about black people raping the white women? Are they genuinely fearful for the future of Western culture? Do they believe that they recently had a job position or a scholarship taken from them because they, as a white person, are not privileged as highly as minorities and are postmodern, affirmative action addled institution? You have to find that out. And you have to use that information to target those insecurities, to target those focuses, and move them over on that. And if you want tips on how to best engage with them in that discourse, then that's rhetoric, baby. That's hours and hours and hours long of talking about, how to best convince somebody. But you know them better than I do. So maybe you'll be able to move them over on virtue of that alone. Finely tune your rhetorical techniques for this specific person you are talking to. How much emotion? How much logic? Probably a lot of emotion, because a lot of the alt-righters I argue with are not particularly reasonable people.
So again, we're using manipulation tactics. We're using persuasion techniques rather than just like being friendly and open with a person and trying to hear them out, but also like giving your point of view to them and trying to present like your explanation. No, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. You have to you have to curtail it. Oh, how much emotion, how much logic. Let me analyze how I can use my rhetoric to get this person where they want to be. Now, this is extremely Jewish in the way that it's thinking. I'm not just saying that because I'm an evil anti-Semite. No, I'm saying that because if you've ever, and you on the left, if you're a leftist, you listen to this, think back to any time you've ever argued with a Zionist. Talk to Zionists. What they will do, first and foremost, they will talk to you with authority. They'll talk to you like they're smarter than you. They know more than you. And if you push back against that, about half the time they'll just flake and they'll just act like, oh, well, I didn't know what you're talking about. Play stupid, that kind of thing. And then the other half, they'll just continue to assert this over and over again. That's because they don't actually care about you. They don't care about you as a person. They are using their rhetoric to try to convince you of what they want you to believe. And if you're not willing to believe what they want you to think, then, you're just an obstacle to be crushed. And that's the way that Vaush is treating this. It's like, well, you try to manipulate them to believe what you want them to believe, but if that doesn't work, just walk away. Just walk away from the whole thing. Fuck the relationship. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you need to have everyone in your life be a Marxist-Leninist, a good little Vaush supporter.
Which issues are they sensitive over? Can you do this like, hey, we used to be friends, what happened kind of thing? Is there an insecurity in their past you can deliberately target? Hey, I can tell you this from personal experience. If there's a dude who's weirdly misogynistic and you've been friends with them long enough to know they've had a bad experience with women in the past, saying something along the lines of, you're letting your hurt get to you, triggers something in the mind of a man who believes they're perfectly rational that will unsettle them for the rest of their life. Yeah, the who hurt you, there's a reason people get upset at that phrase, who hurt you. It's a very, very good reason.
I'll actually agree with Vaush here because it's not good for men to be, turned off of women forever because they've had a few bad experiences. However, the number of women, and I'd say this is true for men too, the number of women who are worth indulging, who are actually like relationship material, is decreasing steadily for reasons related, I would say, relating to capitalism, and Vaush might even agree with me on that. But the problem is, like, this is not purely a matter of personal experience. It may be in some cases. I'm sure it is in some cases. But there are many reasons grounded in reality, grounded in, law. You look at the alimony laws that a lot of MRAs despise, or you just look at the rampant narcissism of women on social media. That's a large driving force for a lot of not just right wing but left wing disdain of women too. Like, I remember when I was a liberal, this was a problem with even a lot of liberal guys or left wing guys that were going MGTOW. So this isn't just a quick fix necessarily, and you should tread lightly when you're going into this, because it may not be, you may be going into it thinking this is just about one bad relationship experience, and you may find that the person you're talking to has a lot more to back up his perspective than what you initially thought.
Anyway, if you think that all of this is like overdoing it or you're putting too much thought into it, that's fine. And it's up to you how much you want to engage with this, because far right people are obnoxious little cunts. And I can't blame you for not wanting to engage fully in them. But please remember that if you're going to give it a shot, give it your best shot. And even then, there are no guarantees. But do your best, And remember, even if it leads to an argument or a disagreement or you hurt their feelings or whatever, remember you're doing it for them too. Alt-righters are miserable. They're fraught with a perpetual deep-seated insecurity about the state of the world in a way which is both irrational and also completely unrelated to their personal lives. They will ascribe every failure they have ever committed unto the world onto a system of social and cultural and political and economic factors which have literally nothing to do with their behavior or their life path.
Remember when I said that Vaush is the king of projection? This is what I was talking about here. I mean, look, you're right to an extent that there are a lot of people who are black-pilled. By the way, there are a lot of people who aren't. No matter what happens to us, no matter how many times, how many videos come out of black people brutalizing whites in the streets, no matter how many times they railroad us through the court system, no matter how many times we are, goaded into electing a politician who's not even in our interest, Trump, Bolsonaro, the list goes on. No matter how many times this happens, there's a lot of people who still stay heartened. But you know what? Yeah, it does drain a lot of people. It does drain a lot of people, particularly the reactionaries, because reactionaries don't have a cohesive ideology, and so they're just reacting to the horrible shit that they see around them. But those people aren't necessarily alt-right. And this is the problem, that Vaush doesn't really understand the group that he's talking about. Oftentimes, if you actually watch Vaush videos, he'll start a video talking about someone like Mark Collette by saying, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And then he just has no idea. He doesn't really understand our politics as well as he would have his audience think. But this is the problem. Not all of us are reactionaries, but I understand that he doesn't want to make that concession because he doesn't want to admit that fascism could have some sort of revolutionary quality to it. He wants to relegate everyone on the right to simply being, reactionaries with lofty ideas, as he would say. But this isn't accurate. But the problem is, when you're talking about people on the right projecting our failures. First of all, I don't see that many failures. I see a lot of people who are very successful. Most of the people in the alt-right are working men, pipe fitters and carpenters and things of this nature, if not, maybe even a little more bougie architects and doctors. You can look at MPI, you can look at the Golden One, and who's a great bodybuilder. And there are so many people that are out there promoting fitness and health and interest in history and culture. I can say personally that my life has improved dramatically since I shifted my way of thinking. And when I was a leftist, everyone in the leftist circles, the fucking pink-haired feminist, fat, rotund, disgusting piece of garbage. These archetypes exist for a reason, because your side of the political aisle is fraught with mental illness and chaos, and people who are disoriented, who are not well adjusted, and it shows. But this is the problem. You will admit that these archetypes exist, but you don't seem to want to grapple with why they exist. And you definitely don't want to have to admit that there's some connection between these archetypes and your ideology. But he'll project. He'll say, no, the people on the right. I mean, this is the thing about Marxism. You're saying, well, the reason why my life is shit is because these capitalists are taking my surplus income. They're taking the surplus value that I create with my work, and they're pocketing it, which is to an extent true, but you can't therefore explain all of your own personal failings by doing that, which is what a lot of leftists do. I rarely see anyone on the right doing this sort of projectionism, and to the extent that I do, it's more like the sort of Daily Stormer incel crowd, or some other people that have been goaded into what is essentially a gay op by either the GOP or the FBI. But no, authentic alt-right people, fascists, third positionists, tend not to have these qualities. But again, he's nitpicking certain people in certain communities in the right, and is trying to make them the avatars of the right to cover up, again, his own deficiencies. Even though Vaush makes a lot of money, he has to make weird excuses for it because he's a Marxist. And then on top of it, he has to justify to himself why it is he's gone through university and he's still doing YouTube videos for a living. Because no matter how much money you make, if you're someone that values labor, if you're someone that's around, the sort of trade union advocates that tend to be sort of roughnecks, these people don't value this kind of work. They don't see you as working class if you make YouTube videos. And there's a certain dignity to working with your hands, to being a laborer, that these people don't tend to grasp because they don't value hierarchy, but also because they're not those people. Vaush is the sort of useful idiot that you'd find among the intellectuals of East Germany or Russia. And that this is not this kind of person that actually values the people that he advocates for. And occasionally you'll see that in his scuffles with the left. He's just a bullshit artist, and he's a master of projection, to the point where he is projecting his own proclivity for projection onto the people he doesn't like. And it's really just fucking chutzpah of another level, isn't it?
To be an alt-righter, to believe in the things they believe in, is to consign yourself to a life of failure, unless you're one of the very lucky few who gets to make a lot of money selling other people an alt-right ideology on YouTube. If you can do that, if you're one of the lucky few who gets to sell, it's like being an alt-righter is like man, what's a funny comparison I can make here? Being an alt-righter is like being a professional vuvuzela player or magician. 99% of the time, you're only going to cause misery to yourself and those around you. And the only time you're not is when you get so good at it or so lucky that you get to teach those crafts to another generation of miserable shit-eaters. So remember, you're doing it for them, okay? You're doing it for them. Anyway, good luck. I get asked this so often. This is legitimately the best advice that I have. I've thought about it for a year and a half, for as long as I've had this channel. I've typed this advice out to probably in the realm of hundreds of people over email or Discord DMs at this point. I am finally committing it now to video format, and this is all I have to say. And I hope it works, because your family and your friends need you. They're in a rough spot right now, and their dumb ideas are hurting their brains, and you should help them.
So, I don't even know what he's talking about here, about us being losers, or everyone I know in the alt-right is working with the exception of those who have been doxxed, who have been rendered unemployable. To the extent to which people in our milieu are not able to work is the extent to which pieces of shit like this have gotten us doxxed and banned and deplatformed, and essentially deplatformed from society. You are the reason when people report you to the capitalist structure and have you rendered unemployable because they'll harass any future employers. They harass your family. They harassed Andrew Dodson's family they harassed him and his family to the point where he killed himself, and then trolled his eulogy. And these people, in conjunction with the capitalist structure they claim to be rebelling against, are the reason why we get fucked over. And then they make fun of us and say, well, it's your own fault for your beliefs. Acting like this just happens organically. You're a fucking piece of garbage. This is why I hate Vaush. It's not his ideology. His ideology is scummy and, fuck Marxist Leninists. These people are fucking a joke. They're a joke. They're children playing in a sandbox, as I said. but it's him as a person. Vaush is an awful human being, a terrible person with deep personality flaws that he will never confront. If he does ever confront them, it will absolutely destroy him because he's been living his life like one big fucking cope for I don't know how many years. And this is where it goes. I mean, if you want to know what Marxism gets you, this is what it gets you. This is what you end up becoming. Vaush, physically, mentally deformed, deficient, mutated, just an absolute, lumpenprole, frankly. And he's not respected. He's not respected by women because he white knights for, dudes in dresses going into the bathrooms and making them unsafe. He's not respected by blacks because he's too weak and frail and fragile, and frankly, he's just disgusting. They would spit on him. They'd abuse him just out of, a visceral reaction to his weakness. He's not respected by white men because he actively fights back against. He actually actively fights against their interests. I can't think of a single group that looks at a man like this and respects him. And that's why, despite all the money he makes, despite owning his own home, at I think the age of 24, 25, he bought a house. He's still lonely. He's still ending up like scraping the bottom of the social barrel. Because there's no ladder you can climb if you subscribe to this ideology that's going to get you to the point where like you have a beautiful girlfriend and a nice life and healthy social environments. There's just nothing. Like this is where you get to. This is the highest rung on the ladder of society that you can hope to achieve if you believe in Vaush's specific brand of communism, and it really shows. So thank you for watching this video if you got this far, and good night.